My name is Donna and I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in 2006, and the type of disease I was diagnosed with then was borderline serous tumors. That's a subtype of ovarian cancer. I was treated surgically and with chemotherapy for about a year, and then lived a very healthy life, or so I thought. I was perfectly healthy until 2016, where I was diagnosed with a recurrence of my disease. What would I tell someone that's just been diagnosed? There are so many things, to say, but I would say number one is you are about to learn about yourself in ways that you never have before. You will, I promise you, learn more about your own strength and resilience. You are stronger than you think you are. That you can and you will get through this. You must have faith. You must believe in yourself. You must believe in the strength of your own body and your body's ability to heal. You must have faith in your doctors. You have to have trust. You have to have a mindset that will enable you to move forward every day. And there's going to be a lot of tough days potentially, and maybe there won't be, and maybe you're going to do a lot better than you think you will. But there will always be hope, absolutely. I just wasn't the kind of person that a support group appealed to. I had zero interest in sitting around with other ovarian cancer patients or being surrounded by other people that were ill. And I think I somehow had an instinct almost to protect myself from that, because there's a lot of reality in that as well. I also was not a person who would go online and start looking up everything. I really tried to focus on information that was pertinent to myself and also information that was positive as much as possible. So support group, no, but give me a survivor to talk to. Let me talk to someone who can give me information or prepare me in some way, or offer me some hope or guidance in terms of what may lay before me. And that's what I would have found very helpful. At least that's what I had in my head, because there's that sort of bubble that you live in when you have cancer, that you feel that there's a relationship and an immediate understanding that you have with another cancer patient that you will not have with anyone else in your life, regardless of how intimate your relationship is. After 2 rounds of chemotherapy, so at this point I'm about 5 months into it, the doctors are starting to realize that apparently my disease is not sensitive, obviously. Chemo-resistant, I think they call it. And so I was given at that point a 10 to 15% chance of survival. That was hard to see it written on documents for insurance purposes and that sort of thing. And that was, at that point I started to lose hope a little bit, really for the first time, because up until that point, I was just soldiering on and arming myself and, gathering my own strength and people around me, and I had all of this support, but that was tough. And I then was given an opportunity and qualified for a clinical trial, and I was like, oh, maybe this is it. This will be the thing, And after, I think it was only 2 rounds of chemotherapy and a clinical trial, they realized that that also was doing nothing. So, that was abandoned. And that was tough, because at that point, I felt as if I'd run out of options. When I had surgery a few months later, as it turned out, it was a best case outcome. My disease was well contained, and they were quite confident that they were able to remove everything. So I'd gone from, a worst case scenario to, you're going to be just fine. And I think that information for me was probably the hardest thing for me to accept after having gone through that entire year and being on that roller coaster of hope and nothing working, and we'll try this and that didn't work, and we'll try that and that didn't work. Well, what are we doing next? But then when I did actually have a positive outcome, it took me months and a few psychiatric appointments to actually get my brain wrapped around it and to accept that. And when you have cancer and you go through treatment, there are a lot of losses involved. So there's really a lot of grieving that has to be done. And everyone's experience is individual, but you've had a loss of your health. You've had a loss maybe of body parts. Maybe you've lost faith in yourself. I know for me, I know that I actually lost some trust in my body. It's like I forgot how strong I was in a way, physically. You know, these are all things that you don't realize, maybe consciously, but there's this innate sense of almost, who am I now? And so cancer changes your life forever. There's no doubt about that. As the years went by and I put more and more distance and time between myself and ovarian cancer, as time went on, I really began to believe that I would, live the rest of my life like a normal, healthy person without cancer, just like everyone else. And so I went for pretty much the next 5 years of feeling, and it appeared on all levels in terms of just yearly physical, your physicals and things, that I was actually in pretty perfect health. And then suddenly I was just randomly, out of nowhere, in June of 2016, had this sudden onset of debilitating pain, just from nowhere. And long story short, a week later, I was told that after I took myself to an emergency room, that I had a recurring metastatic ovarian cancer, and I was absolutely shocked. I couldn't believe it. Shocked. But if I think about, how I reacted when I was given my first diagnosis, and then 10 years later, who that girl was and who this girl was today, once I got over my initial shock and I had to cry and I had to freak out a little, and once I got over that, then it was like, okay, well, we've done this before, we'll do it again. And a part of me knew what to expect, or at least I thought that I knew what to expect. So maybe I was a veteran at that point. I think that the biggest problem that ovarian cancer has is a lack of awareness, because it's such a tragically aggressive disease. Typically, there just aren't the advocates out there. There aren't a lot of survivors. There aren't people out there that are talking about it, quite frankly, because a lot of women don't survive it. Ovarian Cancer Canada is important because they are looking out for Canadian women. They're the only national organization that is advocating on behalf of Canadian women who have this disease. And that's another reason, I think, for me, that I feel almost like I'm here, so I have a responsibility. Women, we need to look after ourselves and each other, because if we don't look after one another, and we're very powerful, what we can accomplish when we come together, we are a force to be reckoned with. And Canadian women, we need to stand up and demand better from our government. Something has to be done to change the outcomes of this disease. I really believe that. And Ovarian Cancer Canada is really leading the fight. I completely accept that now I need to find a way to live with my disease, at least at this particular point in time. So I have embarked on a therapy or a medication that, you know, initially when you begin taking it, they really you need to be having this medication for 3 to 4 months before a diagnostic will be performed, before they'll even know if it'll have any effect whatsoever. So that was hard again, getting up to that 3 or 4 month period, but day to day, I don't focus on that, and day to day, I don't focus on that I'm living with ovarian cancer. Day to day, I just focus on, you know, living my best possible life. And fortunately for me, the first, you know, 3 or 4 months into taking this new medication, I did have a minor response where my tumors actually shrunk by about 25%. So it was like, wow, that was pretty amazing. But in those moments leading up to seeing those test results, I was absolutely petrified. But it was really for about, you know, the day before, I was feeling like a lot of anxiety. But I sort of don't let myself go there, because there's really no point. You're not helping yourself. You have no control. You just have to wait for the information, and you have to hope for the best and just try to focus on living your life and living and what you're going to be doing day to day. Because if you get sort of, you know, drawn into and meshed in that thinking, you start, you know, you go down that path of almost sabotaging yourself and living in a state of fear, and it really, really makes it harder. So now I would say that I'm working really hard every day on acceptance, and that's really key for me. And on living my best possible life, on living. I think that's very important.